Hey everyone, welcome back to CodeLearnX. Today finally we are here with another video under this CodeLearnX Java Programming Fundamental series. Currently we are learning Java basics and we have already seen introduction to Java and Java installation, where we have seen how we can manage multiple versions of Java in one machine, and we have already seen how we can install Java and all. So if you have not followed these previous two videos, right, you can go on this YouTube channel and you can follow the playlist CodeLearnX Java Programming Fundamentals. And if you have not subscribed to this YouTube channel, please press the subscribe button and press the bell notification. So if I upload any further video as part of this series, you will get notified about this and you do not miss anything that I upload as part of this playlist. So now it's time that we will learn the basic syntax and structure that we follow in Java. So let's start. I have a one diagram. So we'll start with the data types in Java. Basically, for in any programming language, when we are learning any programming language, these four words that needs to be understood by any developer or programmer that is learning that programming language. So those words are keywords, identifiers, data types, and variables. So as part of this video, we will be exploring these four words like keywords, identifiers, data types, and variables. So firstly, I will see data types. So data types in Java can be broadly divided into two categories, right? So primitive data type and non-primitive data type, which is also called as reference data type. And further, primitive data type can be divided into non-numeric type and numeric type, like char and boolean comes under non-numeric type, okay, and integer and floating points basically comes under numeric type, okay, and integer has these 4 byte, short, int, long, and floating point has float, double. So if we talk about non-primitive or reference data types, we have classes, interfaces, strings, arrays, and enum. So we will explore all these in details. So let me open this source. Like, I will create one new file here and I will name it as student.java. So I am taking a real world entity student, right, and based on that I will try to explain all those primitive and non-primitive data type so that it will be easier for us to understand. Okay, so I have created this file student.java. So firstly what I will do is I will create as you all know that public class is public class is required to write any Java. So it has already declared a public class student, right? So a student is a real world entity, right? Okay, so what I will do, firstly we will cover primitive data types. Okay, primitive data types. So what are primitive data types we have? We have byte, correct? We have short, we have int, we have long, we have float, and we have double, correct? Okay, we have byte, short, int, long, float, double. Two more are remaining, that is non-numeric types. Okay, so I will also write down those two primitive data types. So those are char and boolean. Okay, so if I talk about the primitive data types, so in Java, primitive data types are the most basic types of data that represent single value. So if we see, with help of all these data types we can store only single value. In byte we cannot store more than one value. In short also we cannot store more than one value. So all these 8 primitive data types we cannot store more than one value. So these are data types. These data types are used to represent a single value. So if I take an example, so what I can store in byte for a student. So a student will have its age, right? So I can store byte age and equal to suppose 20, right? So I can store a student's age in byte. Okay, if I talk about short, right, what I can store in short for a student, right? So we can store their height. Student will have its height, right? So I will store height in cm, and I will give it as a value 170 cm. Okay, so then we have int. What we can store? A student will have a student id, right? Suppose it's 1 2 3 4. Okay, now what we have for long, student will have its contact number, right? Contact number, I will store 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0. Okay, student has its contact number. Then what we can store as float, right? A student will have its GPA. Okay, so we can store GPA. Okay, GPA equal to suppose 6.78, right? Now what we can store as part of double, right? A student will have a student will pay tuition fee, right? Tuition fees. What I can store, like suppose 15,000 and 85.85. Okay, so this is okay. Why it is giving red, right? This is giving error because Java is recognizing it as an integer. So by default Java recognizing it as integer, right? So for differentiation, right, because I have given it a float, to recognize it as a float I have to give as F, capital F. Now the error will be gone. Okay, now we have character. So in character we can store only one single character. Any of the ASCII value we can store in character. So what can be stored for a student as a character? So we can check whether this student is enrolled, right, in any of the courses, right? So I will, for now I will take it as true, right? Now we have boolean. No, so, okay, sorry. So is enrolled will be coming as part of this is enrolled boolean, right? And I will store it as a true. Okay, what we can store as a character, right, for a student? We can store students grade, right? Student will have grade, right? So we can store, suppose students get a grade of A, so we can store it as part of that. So okay, so these are the primitive data types, right? So we have used for a student, but what you see here is, right, so byte basically stores 8-bit of signed integer. So it can range from -128 to +127, right? So then for if we come for the short has 16-bit signed integer, so it's basically of 2 byte, right? So it can store it has a defined range, right? So in similar fashion we have a range, we have a predefined memory space for the long int and long, float, double, char, boolean, right? So if we talk about int, right, for int we have 32-bit signed integer, so basically it's a 4 byte. And if we talk about long, it's a 64 bit, right? So it's almost not perfectly 8 bytes, so it takes 8 byte of memory space in our machine, right? So if we talk about float also takes 4 byte, right, means 32 bit. And double, if we talk about double also takes 64 bits, that is 8 byte, right? If we talk about char, so char basically takes 2 byte or 16 bit. And if we talk about boolean, it takes 1 byte of space in our memory. So that is what basically primitive data type is. Now it's time to explain keywords and identifiers. So what are these? Byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, boolean, this class, this public. So these are the keywords, right? So these are the keywords that Java have. So we cannot use that anywhere else. So these are predefined words. So basically in Java, keywords, right, are important part of programming language. So keywords are special words that are already defined by Java and have a specific meaning. So these words tell the Java compiler what to do, right? So byte will say that this variable is of type byte. So short will say that this height in cm variable is of data type short. So these have predefined words in Java that tells compiler what to do and what not to do. So since they have a fixed purpose, right, we cannot use them for anything else like naming our variables or classes or interfaces, anything. So these are the keywords. Now coming to the identifier, what is this is, right? So if we talk about variable, so is a variable, fine, but when we give this data type, then it's become variable. If I simply type here anything, right, suppose anything, what is this, this is not a variable, right? Until we do not define its type, it will not be declared as variable. So variable, when we have defined its data type and given an identifier or name, then data type and identifier together makes a variable, right? So if we say that byte is equal to 20, so it's a is variable which is of type byte. So while naming variables, right, while giving name to our variables, we have to choose identifiers, right? We have to give identifiers, and in Java we have some specific rules and regulations that we have to give, we have to follow for naming any variables. So identifiers are the names that we as a programmer create to name different elements of our code, right? So we can use identifiers to name variables, methods, classes, and many more. So whatever name we give in a specific part of our code, right, so that can be called as an identifier. So we give name to our variables, we give name to our methods, we give name to our classes, interfaces, enums, and many more. So there is a specific rule or a specific instruction that every programmer have to follow, whoever writing code in Java. So in that particular way they can name their variables, right, or methods or classes. So these naming conventions are called, like, we can call it as an identifier. You are identifying something with a name, right, of it can be variable, method, or class. So they cannot, first rule is they cannot be of a keyword, right? So we cannot give any variable, method, or class, or interface name, or enum name as public or class, because these are the reserved keywords in Java, byte shortened. So that should not be a keyword. Then they must follow certain signs, right? So if we say they must begin with a letter, we cannot say that 1 2 if I press enter, right, we cannot name it as 1 2 3 and anything. This is not correct way of giving an identifier. We cannot start with numbers. So instead of that, we can start with a dollar sign, right, underscore, right? If I give comma, so dollar sign, underscore, right, and any letter, right? So these are the rules, right? After that we can follow after we start with these three, right, any of these three, then we can give a number also. So that is how they must begin with a letter, a dollar sign or underscore, and can contain letters, digits, dollar sign or underscore after the first character. So only these dollar sign and underscore are required in the identifier rule, right? So only these two special character you can use in identifier. So I think we cannot, if I defined a int and I am starting with is at the rate, right, so I think I cannot use that, because if I define it as 23, so this will give me an error, right, because at the rate, syntax error on token at the rate, delete this token Java. So we cannot, only these two special characters are allowed while naming the identifiers. So just remember underscore and $, we can use in the identifier name. So identifiers are like the labels you give to things, so you can keep track of them, just as you might call a friend by their name to identify them, right? So in Java, you use identifiers to refer to different parts of your program. Now we will talk about non-primitive or reference data types. So in Java, right, reference data types are used to store references, or we can say addresses, to objects rather than the actual data. So what in this diagram we have already seen that non-primitive or reference data type can be of classes, right, interfaces, strings, arrays, and enum. So let's see each of them, right? So if I say first one was classes, right? Then we have interfaces, then we have arrays, then we have strings, then we have enums. So these are all reference data types which can use primitive data types, right? So if we say about classes, right, so a class is a blueprint for creating objects, right? It can contain fields and attributes and methods, which is also called functions. So we define many inside a class, right? We define fields which are called the instances. Basically class is a blueprint for any object or any real world entity. In our case, right, a student is a real world entity, so we are defining a class, right? A student will have its instances like fields, their age, height in cm, student id, contact number, gpa, tuition fees, grade, is enrolled. So these are the attributes or fields, right? We can make different functions that we call as methods, right? So to access the properties of a student. So for that, right, so this is the way that reference data types or non-primitive data types can be defined in Java. So similarly, if we talk about interfaces, so interface defines a contract that classes can implement. So why we call it a contract, right? So an interface define a contract that classes can implement. So if we do not know the functionalities, how it behave, so for that common functionality we define an interface, and then class can implement that functionality. So it can contain abstract method and constants, but no implementation. So interfaces, right, we have some constants, right, so we have some abstract method, but only that initialization is there, or but we have no any implementation out there. We implement those in our classes. So now we'll talk about arrays, right? So arrays are basically collection of elements of the same data type, right? It can store multiple value in a single variable. So suppose I say this student wants to store the marks, right? This student wants to store the marks. So here I will give or whether we can say this, I will create a string array, right? So this is how you define an array, right? And I will give subjects. So I want to know what subjects this student is reading, right? So I will create a array of strings and I will give it as a name subjects, right? And now I will give what subjects this student is reading. So this student is reading math, then physics, right, then chemistry. So this student is reading this these three subjects, right? So that is how we can store. So this is how we store arrays in our program, Java program, right? So basically arrays can be of any of the primitive data types. You can create a similar array marks like integer array marks, int of marks and marks, right? And we can store there. So let me do that also. I can make an array of int primitive, right? And I will give it as a name. Basically marks is an identifier, right? So marks, and I will store the marks of the each subject. Suppose in maths a student has got 98. In physics, right, here the spelling of physics is wrong, PHYSICS. okay, now it's fine, physics. So suppose in physics a student has got some 97 marks, and in chemistry students have got 89 marks. So this is how you create an array of any of the primitive data types. Even you can create arrays of boolean, character, double, any of the primitive data type you can create an array. So this is how reference variables are created. Okay, so if we talk one thing, the difference between primitive and non-primitive data types, right? So if we see that primitive data types do not have, we cannot, if I show you, right? So first what I will do is I will create a main method, right? I will create this main method, and then I will paste it here. I will cut it from here and I will paste it inside the main method, so that we can access the functions that is related to this. Okay, so if I say, right, so if I s out and tab, right, if I say subjects dot, no, it has subjects dot, right? So these many functions that we have for non-primitive data types. So basically non-primitive data types have some predefined functions with it, or their attributes, right? So this is not with the primitive data types. So only non-primitive data types have these functionalities. So this is one of the difference between primitive and non-primitive data types. So if I want to know how many subjects the student is reading, right, so we can check the length, right? So we have this length attribute here, right? So we can use that, right? And if I want to s out, right, marks of like first subject, that is math, we can get it as marks of 0. So these are the like some methods or functions that we already associated with non-primitive data types, right? So that is what we can use that. So if I am running that, so for the first time it is taking some time. Okay, let that be. Okay, so see, I have printed out the length, how many the student is learning 3 subjects, math, physics and chemistry, and in maths the student has got 98 marks. Okay, so now we have talked about, right, variables, right? So variables, these together, the data types and the identifier together makes variable. We have talked about primitive data types, reference data types. We have talked about keywords, right? Now we talk about the scope of a variable, right? So basically in Java, if I show you one diagram, I already have where is that Java variable scope, right? So in basically Java we have these 4 scopes, right? Scope of a variable in Java. So local scope, static scope, block scope and instance scope. So if I come to this class, right, and if I open this scope in next window, right, if I open this in like somewhat similar to this, and if I come to our program, first one is the local scope. So if I say this subjects and like marks, these are the 2 non-reference or non-primitive data types. So these are accessible in this main method only. So this is kind of local scope, we can say that these two variables are in local scope. Local scope. So if I say more about the local scope, right? So local scope, a variable declared inside a method or a block, right? That we can call as a local scope. So this variable, right, subjects and marks, these are two non-primitive data types, right? Non-primitive or data types variables, right? Okay, so that is defined in this main method. That's why this is the local scope, or any method that is defined between, right? If I say in future we this is called as a block scope, block, right? So whatever variables that are defined under this two, like curly braces, that will be also declared as a local variable. So we can access those variables in that block only, not beside that block. So that is local scope. If I talk about instance scope, right? Then look, from local scope we have instance scope. So a variable declared in a class but outside any method. So this is a student class, right? So this is a student class, and we have declared some of the variables, right? Students properties like age, height and cm, student id, contact number, gpa, tuition fees, grade, and is enrolled. So we have defined declared these variables inside a class, but this is not inside any method, right? So for instance scope, a variable declared in a class but outside of any method. So we have this main method inside this student class, and some of the variables that are defined under this main method, these are declared as local scope, and these variables are called as instance variable. So the scope of this variable is instance scope, or we can call it as an instance variable also. So these are the like student instances, right? So now we have that static scope. So what we have for static? So variables declared with a static keyword in a class, right? So that is known as a static scope or a static variable. So these static variables are shared among all instances of the class. There are only one copy. So if I say I am creating a class for a student class for any particular school. So all the students who are coming under that school will have a same school name, right? So if I make a variable string, that the type of that variable is string, and if I say that college name, in this case, right, it will be similar for all of those. So I will see ABC college, right? So I want to make this college name common for all those students who are studying in this college. So I can make this variable static. So for that I have to use static keyword. So this is the scope of this variable college name is now static. So every class, every object of this class can access that static variable. So if you talk about the instance variables, right? So instance scope is only related to one particular object. So basically static, if I give this static keyword in here, right? So it means the Java will create only one copy of this variable, right? And it will be shared among all the instances of that class. So all the objects of that class. So if in the ABC college, if 1000 students are studying, so 1000 copy of the instances variable will be there associated with each student, but only one copy of this static variable, that college name, that will be shared among all 1000 students of this class or college, right? So that is how we can, with help of a static, right, declaring the variables static, we can save large amount of memory in our program. So now we have already seen local scope, static scope, instance scope, and block scope, right? So basically I have already defined that block. This is what we have in block scope. So in block scope, variables declared within a block of code, right? So like if we block scope is best example, it's a loops, like when we are writing any loop, right? For loop, while loop, do while loop, right? So if else loop, right? If that inside that particular loop, if we declare any variable, so we can use that variable to that block only, that cannot be accessed outside of that. So that is the block scope. That's it for the video, guys. I think it became a long video, so in next video where I will be covering typecasting, there I will explain the two remaining reference data types, that is strings and enums, where we'll see the different predefined functions or methods that are available in strings, like length function and substring functions. So if you are watching till here, I hope you like this content. So if you have not subscribed to this YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button and press the bell notification so you do not miss any further video that I upload as part of this playlist. So stay tuned for the next video. Till then, keep coding, keep learning. Thank you so much.